You are.
Back archery.
Hey, everybody. Greg Poole here at Bojunkie Media, bojunkie.com. It's time for another podcast. We are, this is not a part two, but it is kind of a part two in that today's guest, as those of you on screen can see, he's got his hair did and all that kind of good stuff. Hopefully, not just for me, but did a podcast earlier this week with Jonathan Lene, a gentleman I've known for quite a long time. He is the president of Bear Archery under the Escalade umbrella. And for those of you living under a rock that might not know, Escalade Bear per se purchased bee stinger and gold tip arrows. And as part of that, I guess you could call it the last man standing in the gold tip count is the tallest guy. And so that's our longtime friend. I've told the story many times. Tim was actually my very first sponsor in this sport ever. At the Bend Super Shoot, handed me his own arrows and said, "Try these and call me in a couple weeks." And so been knowing this guy for a long time. Pretty much a familiar face and a familiar voice to everybody. It's Tim Gillingham, folks. Welcome to the program, Timmy.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Absolutely. So let's just get right to it, man. Is this a big sigh of relief for you? I because you are an emotional person. You wear
Oh,
you wear your emotions on your sleeve, good and bad. You don't have any problem letting your emotions show through, which I appreciate. I mean, I'm a crier, for Christ's sake. Doesn't bother me, but just talk about the emotions of this last several, I don't know how long, whether it's been months or a year, however long it's been, but just talk about the emotions of another gold tip sale, and kind of where it ended up going now.
well, this has been just, I've been here 23 years, big part of my life, big part of my passion has been driven towards building Gold Tip. When I first started at Gold Tip, it was, I really like this job. So if I really want to keep this job and do what I do, I got to make this company successful. And it was fun to me. It was, I mean, it's provided a lot of opportunity to me, but I take it very I take a lot of responsibility in seeing a success come through. And it's had its ups and downs, and probably the most devastating emotional thing was when, kind of the first 5 years we were just sitting there on the verge of bankruptcy, and just wondering if you're going to have a job day to day. And then Tom Zelenovich took it over, and you just got to see what happened with incredible leadership, and we didn't get along on everything, but he really ran the ship quite well. And he took that company from nothing to, selling it to Bush now. I mean, that's what he did. That's what he got in it for, right? And it was just kind of devastating because it was just finally starting to get its due. It was just finally starting to get, you know, its backbone, and had support, and you wanted, to bring new products to the market and fill this niche, and you know, get this shooter because he's going to help us promote, and so on and so forth. Everything was just happening. And then he sold it to Bush now, and it was just kind of like a headless horse from that point going forward. It really was. It was just they run off. I watched him run off great people like Mitch McKay. I
Right.
mean, the guy that I would be if I wanted a sales manager would be my first phone call. And you run a guy like that off, and it's just like, wow. And you just seen all this battle of egos and back and forth, and but we always had our core team, you know, me, Cody, and Casey. You know, Preston left, but they kind of run him off too. And it just got to the point. Some people just didn't see a future in it anymore. They let other people go for so-called cuts. But the real devastating blow was when they let Cody and Casey go, and it was just like, why?
Right.
Does anybody have a clue what they do? And so having this opportunity, and it's been struggle. I mean, it's been hard all year. I mean, I it stressed me out, to be honest with you. And I just try to focus on my day-to-day tasks, and try to rely on the shooting staff we put together. we still got a great product. We were still shipping product great. And, the customer service side of it, wasn't the greatest for a long time. And that's kind of what I really look forward to with John Lene and his team, is that we actually have a team now. We can plug Gold Tip into a team,
Right.
and that's already there, and that knows archery. And, I can have an assistant for the first time in my life to help me track orders and follow credit card, where I was doing all that stuff myself. And it just takes me away from doing what I'd be more effective at as, an ambassador for the company. So
Right.
I stuck it out. I mean, I had some other people hit me up to come work for them, and it was just this heavy weight. I mean, what do you do? What do you do? I'm waiting for the, hearing rumors and not knowing what to do, and knowing that if I didn't go with Gold Tip, it was probably the death kiss. And I want to see this company and its product line have its due, because it's a phenomenal product line. It's a phenomenal product, and it just needs a little bit of tweaking and leadership, and it's unstoppable. I was joking. I think if Tom was still at the helm, it would have probably been us and Easton left. I don't think those other companies would have, had a chance to see the light of day.
Sure.
Black Eagles and your Ultras, the lack of leadership created a vacuum, even Victory, So I heard a rumor that we were offered Victory, as soon as we bought Bush now, for the price of a contract on carbon, which was just, wow. You could have just, things you could have done if you'd have teamed those two, us and them up. So,
Right.
it's just, leadership is everything. I really look forward to, doing what I'm good at, working with some of these guys and their team. And I know some of them already. Greg Mancini,
Yep.
Jay James, I think, works for him. And these are guys that have shopped for me for years. Greg's dad owned a big shop. Jay James. So you got guys that understand the game. They have a passion for the game. It's probably why they're doing what they do.
Right.
Whereas when you get in this corporate, world of Vista, they throw people at you to help you that don't know a knock from a point. And that doesn't lead well. When we were at Gold Tip, pre-Tom and up, we just had a dynamic team of just passionate people that really loved, the sport and loved what we did. And some of us were just hunters. Some of us, did both, but we all got along, and we all, moved the company along and up the food chain. So.
Right. Yeah. So first of
pretty
all,
pretty big sigh of relief, now that
right.
Got a final offer and have settled in, and just got my work laptop yesterday. So I'm going to start getting settled in and start meeting.
So before I'm going to prevent myself at least 100 messages right now. Let's either slide you to your left, or, hey, there he goes. Now Timmy's in the middle. You have no idea how many messages I would have got about why Timmy's standing half off screen. Anyway, or
is that what?
no one cares about that. So anyway, and so let's talk a little bit. Like I said, this last however many months, and John Lene, who is the president of Bear, was open and saying they've tried this 2 or 3 times already.
Yeah.
But specifically in this last time frame, when you saw Cody Powell get cut loose, Casey get cut loose, feeling like your job is on the line regardless of your performance it's a shitty place to be. And so right. For a guy like you, and I said this years ago, the only reason I ever went to Gold Tip was you. The only reason a lot of people went to Gold Tip was you. Not that you're, everyone's taking long walks on the beach with you and whatnot, but your passion and your, the things that you do resonate with folks. And so talk a little bit about your internal process, like this last 5-6 months when you were seeing these other people get cut and kind of the writings on the wall, but at the same time, seeing who they let go. How close were you to feeling like you were going to be next?
Well, I didn't really feel like I'd be next because I was like, what what's left? I mean, you can't run with
Fair,
nobody.
fair,
And
fair point. Fair
you know,
point.
I'd actually put an offer in to buy it with Tom, and
Right.
but but Escalade actually had first bang at it, and that was just, I didn't really want to do that very badly, but you know,
Right.
that's not my expertise. My expertise is, products, people, so on and so forth. And like you said, if people shoot gold tip because of me, and I always reference that with Darren Christenberry and Ultra. What gave life to Ultra is not the arrow; it's the people,
Right.
right? And that's what these corporate companies don't understand. And after getting an introduction to Escalade, I feel like they're very um, people oriented culture there. Like they appreciate their people. They take good care of their people. They want long term employees.
Right.
And I've talked to a couple of their engineers, or at least one of them that I know. I've actually shot their little thumb button up at Dakota Classic the first day. Um, and there's things that I like about it. Like it's going to be fun to work with them. It's going to be fun to like say,
Right.
ideas. And I don't have all the answers, but I got a lot of answers. I've
Right.
done a lot of stuff.
Right.
I've sorted a lot of stuff out in my life, but it's yeah, it was that kind of hurt to see Cody go, because I mean that just told me straight up that nobody did a damn bit of research.
Right.
You know,
Well, and I mean, to your point, and this is something that I really recognize with John Lene, and here's the big thing. And I was shocked to I didn't I mean, I looked at Escalade's portfolio and I was like, Jesus, they own everything. But they're a publicly traded company. They're not a private equity firm. And the thing that resonates with me is they didn't hire Tim Gillingham to work on their ping pong tables.
right,
They hire ping pong people for that. And
right.
so the fact that they have John Lene, an archery guy, in running, overseeing all of the archery things, and then John Lene has the freedom to hire other archery people to design and do archery things. And then they can buy other archery companies, and then they keep archers and people like Tim that do archery things. I mean, you guys probably see where I'm going with this. I don't call a goddamn plumber to fix my roof. Period. You just don't. And that's the problem that our sport is really seeing, our not our sport, our industry is really seeing right now. And to Tim's point, fine, private, whatever, buy companies all you want. But when you put the wrong people in charge of those companies, you end up destroying the company and destroying the brand and losing money. And so,
I
how,
use
go
I
ahead.
use an analogy all the time too. And I use this with my bosses and stuff when they start questioning the validity of, say, shooter staff programs, or how does that impact? These companies so many times look at that 85% of the sales are in bow hunting. So what are we spending any time in target archery? And nobody understands that better than Matt McPherson at Matthews. You know, and John, it's good to see that John, and I didn't know, I just heard that name, and I knew it associated with PSE, and
Yeah.
then a couple of friends, I really respect, told me he's a great guy, and so, you know, got nothing to worry about. And my first conversations with him have just been awesome. So,
Yeah. Well, and John is, yeah.
but to finish up on my point,
Yeah.
what I was saying is that I have watched other companies where corporate people come in. Prime example is Carbon Express. They had a phenomenal product.
They did. They did.
They come in and somebody made the axe move, and wow, year and a half later, they're like not even around.
No, no.
I've been part of one of those axe moves too.
Yes. 100%. Well, and that's what happens when you have people. And look, folks, for those of had Timmy, here's the scary part. Our whole careers, there's been the gold tips, the Eastons, the Carbon Expresses, et cetera. And there's always been some but people today don't understand how much of an impact Carbon Express was in the market 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I know they had no idea.
Yeah, they were for real. You know, I was shooting a Carbon Express with the Buff Tough 3D arrows when I met Timmy. But after that, I've not shot a Carbon Express since. So I'm not saying anything good or bad about the. I don't
I
even.
don't know. Yeah, the funny thing about this is knowing what I know from working in this industry for so long. You don't know how many people in the Sichuan province of China and Bhutan are pissed off at Carbon Express. That was like Maxima Hunter Central right there, boy.
Yeah, I mean it's
That's
crazy, and they had a
over there get stuck on a certain product, and that's all they want, you know. And
right, and so it's wild to see the things that we have seen, and so talk a little bit about your, you know, and that John talked about it briefly as well, but I want your perspective as also. So talk a little bit about your conversations. Obviously, you don't need to disclose anything that shouldn't be, but talk a little bit about the conversations you have had with John and basically, you know, kind of the tones and whatever he said that made you decide, yep,
well, it was just the fact that, you know, number one was he told me right off the get go that, you know, yes, we are publicly traded, but I've already, you know, earmarked good budgets for tooling for this, for that. And I'm thinking, okay, this guy gets it. Okay, he knows what we need. And I kind of just coached him along with some of the things that I thought, you know, we needed, you know, right away. As a takeover, there's certain audits that need to be done. There's certain, you know, let's look at some, but we got money to fix some things. There's lots of things that I want to do that
right,
that nobody would ever listen to me. Or I mean, for the last 4 or 5 years, it was like, who the hell do you even go to? Right. You know,
right,
just like you could go to the guy at the food chain, but he didn't have any power, you know,
right,
and it was just like it was almost like I didn't know who my boss was half the time. So, but you know that particular that particular thing there was the fact that he was, you know, going to battle to get money earmarked, and the fact that he had one of the my big concerns was, you know, tournament archery, and are we going to continue to? No, and he assured me we were not only we're going to do it, we're going to expand it.
right.
Okay, so um, you know, so that's, you know, and I'm sure with his time at PS, he understands that a little bit better than some, you know, executive officers and things like that. So, you know, that's a comfort. That was a comfort to me to understand that, hey, I don't need a lot of disruptions in my life. I'm 56 years old. I want to do what I'm good at, right?
Right.
And it's just a matter of, you know, one at a time till we get it back. You know, we fix all the little problems that I know exist. I know where they exist.
Right.
And a lot of times, you know, I got relegated and treated as, you know, the guy that would never be happy. So disregard his opinion, you know. But I kind of also joke around and say, well, if you please me, then nobody else will care. So,
All right.
I mean, there's lots of little things that I'd like to, you know, little tweaks, you know, like I'm going to go in and I'm one of the first projects I'm going to redesign like the GTO knock bushings, because I never felt like the fit was overly perfect on that.
Mm-hmm.
And just one of the things that I could never get changed, you know.
Right.
Just there, you know, been a headless horse for so long, you know.
Absolutely. So,
So those are little things that just that'll make a shooter go to another brand, and then everybody that he knows, everybody has a sphere of influence, both positive and negative.
right.
So, you know, in the early days, I was, you know, I'd get guys, they would ask me about, you know, something that happened, you know, or a guy called in and he broke an arrow or blew his bow up or something, and we know that this guy did it himself, and I would just instruct him to like, hey, make sure the guy knows that we know that he's at fault, but replace the product.
Right.
We aren't out nothing, but we don't need the negative that, you know, that negative sphere of influence that he has, you know, to trickle down, you know, down range. It's cheaper for us to take care of the guy, make him happy,
Right.
than it is to, you know, create this little fight with him, you know.
Yeah.
And the same applies to positive, you know. If I treat people right, that's going to compound, right?
Right. So let's talk about the staffing thing in particular. And Tim and I, especially Timmy and I, we could do a series of podcasts on staff, how to utilize staff, how staff is beneficial. Tim and I could talk about that forever. I'm just going to tell you right now, folks, it is. Yes, it's not the majority. It's not, but it's the marketing arm for everything else. How many NASCAR tires do you think they sell from NASCAR? Goodyear. They don't sell any of those. It's brand awareness, and it substantiates what the brand, the value of the brand, and their ability to make good products.
Well, part of it is too, what people don't, a lot of people don't understand is that we're still a pro shop driven sport.
I'm
Okay.
wrong with
So
the stutter here, bro. Come on.
the end consumer may not know who Levi Morgan or Tim Gillingham or Jesse Broadwater is, but that guy behind the counter does,
Right.
you know,
And,
and
yeah.
we're influencing them to influence their customers. I believe 70 to 75% of the people walking in a pro shop are influenced by the guy behind the counter. Or they're influenced by somebody they trust. The higher the ticket of the item, the more they have to have an endorsement to be able to from somebody they trust.
Right.
Okay, in order to buy it. And then the box store situation is they don't really want to sell anything. They want to sell what sells. Well, what sells is you know, is what we've made popular, throughout those different avenues, whether it's target archery that trickles into the pro shop, and pro shop, the guy behind the counters, on our staff or is educated on how to use our product the best. And it's up to us to build the best product to, endear them to us.
Right. 100%. And so let's talk about that staff for a minute. Like I said, I think it was 2002. I literally remember sitting in my truck outside of Maurice Audet's shop here in Klamath Falls when you called me and offered me a staff position. I think it was 2002. I didn't even know what that meant other than free product. But back then, free product wasn't what we were all chasing. We all wanted to win. Like back then, we were paying for ourselves, and the amount of money that Tim and I have spent getting ourselves to and from events over the years is astronomical. Everyone's like, oh, well, you get everything for free now and people pay. Yeah, well, it wasn't always that way. And so you had developed a very, very dominant staff at Gold Tip. I mean, very dominant, especially in 3D. And so talk a little bit about, and look, folks, that comes down to products, that comes down in some cases, financial compensation. It comes down to a lot of things, but talk a little bit about kind of how that struggle has, manifested for you the last 5 or so years, because I'm not going to say anything here, folks, that Timmy doesn't know, but the Gold Tip staff is not what it was once. It's nothing to do with in my opinion, it's nothing to do with the products. I don't even think it's really anything much to do with Timmy, but kind of explain to people some of the battles you've had the last 5 years or so trying to, maintain such a powerful mechanism in our industry.
People want to belong to something. And when they start to see something fall apart and they start to see something not supported, and one of the big kickers was, and it may seem small, but when they moved our shipping 100% to Mexico, like they would literally build all our components down the street from my house, ship them to Mexico, and then ship them out to our customers from there. And a lot people understand a lot of our products made here in the U.S. Almost all of our components our knocks are made here, but they made that decision because they were shipping Camelback out of there, and they thought that was a great idea, which it wasn't. And one of the caveats to that is that I used to be able to send out clothing, apparel. Guys could buy it with their orders. I could no longer do it.
Right.
Because Mexico has a Quiladora ramifications where you can't ship clothing into Mexico, pre-finished goods. And so that is one of the big things that I feel like, and it may seem small and insignificant, but that's a support mechanism that people like to, they like to wear their, sponsors apparel. And that was just one example of, that they could see where things weren't going the way they should be.
Right.
When we built this staff early on, I mean, when I first started traveling out to the ASAs and, as many events as we could go to, what built the brand was me standing out there on the practice range at dark with a set of 250 spined arrows that people were like, there's no way those will shoot. And I'm like, here, try them. They didn't understand. People are only subject to their own understanding. And I was subject to all that too. I was subject to that, but I also was subject to watching a buddy of mine with a 26-inch draw length at 38 pounds shooting 26-13s in the same freaking hole over and over and over and over again.
Right.
In the mid 90s, he's shooting 60Xs with a gator jaw.
Right.
You know what a gator jaw is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, well, John Bamberg, he used to wear it out, man. And so that just always kind of made me question. And I've been at this game a long time, and I still get clarity on things.
Right.
Like this young guy sent me one of these arrow bending machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I agree with it. I just my experience with that, I just don't think it'll work. But me and Lance Camara was down here last 3 or 4 days, kind of helping me with some 3D printing stuff and just kind of hanging out. And I finally put it together and was messing around with it. And I thought, well, maybe I need to run some tests with this thing. But they're just so, I've got a really good understanding of how to get from A to Z, but that took a lot of years and a lot of back and forth clarification. And yeah, I was wrong on some things for a while, or I don't know if I'd say wrong. It's just that there were better ways that yet to be discovered.
Correct.
And I think back then, everybody was just of the mind that the Easton Spine chart says it's too stiff, so it's too stiff. Well, they don't even question where that data came from.
Or how old it is.
Or they don't even know where it came from.
Right.
How did they come up with those numbers? Do you think it's math? A lot of people do. They think it's just like mathematical formula. So when I always question people, like when they tell me an arrow's too stiff, and I said, okay, if you could see that on high-speed video, what does it look like? What does it look like? Because I just watched Kyle Douglas win Vegas 2 years in a row with a 25.5-inch triple X.
That's a 150 spine.
Yeah. And I built arrows for Lindsay Witherspoon. She won Lancaster with it, with a 120 grain point and a 24.5-inch triple X. Yeah, it was outside their comfort zone when I introduced it to them, but if you just understand, with bows and arrows, and the more you do it, the more you understand it. We didn't know nothing back then, when I first met you.
Right.
Just I was out grinding, it took me 20 years to win my first pro tournament. 20. So when I couldn't go to pro tournaments, the reason I met you is because I was running the road trying to shoot every regional tournament I could.
Yep.
And if I got to I always tell this to a lot of young guys, and I said, if you can't win at a local level every time, what makes you think you can win at a national level?
That you ain't gonna.
Yeah. So it's just the old saying that pros practice till they can't get it wrong. Is just you got to have passion for that. And, a lot of the younger generation want it right now. And it's just like, you got to love what you do first.
Right. And look, man, I think a lot of people are missing the fact these days that, and we've seen it. Shit, I was one of them. You can thump everybody at home. You can thump everybody in your state. You can thump everybody in your region. But when you go to a national event and you're shooting against Jesse Broadwater, Dave Cousins, Rio Wild, Danny McCarthy, Levi Morgan, you ain't shit anymore. I'm sorry. That's just there's just levels to this. There's levels. Now, that doesn't mean you can't sell a shit ton of product back home and that you're not influential. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about straight up.
To be honest with you, if you look at my staff, 70% of them are, different forms of amateur level shooters that have different forms of influence.
Right.
One might run a kids program. One might coach S3DA. One might, work at a pro shop. I can't tell you how many guys I've given 24 arrows that influenced $30,000 in sales for the company.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's tough. It's tough to run a staff because it's hard to demote people.
Right.
That's almost impossible to do. And so you got to be careful on starting people where and a lot of parents come up and they want their kids sponsored, and it's just like, hey, they're too young, man. Do they have a spirit of influence? Some of them do.
Right.
Some of them you can see early on are going to have a bright future, and they're well supported, and you just take a chance with them,
Yeah.
like Levi.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it's always it has cracked me up for 20 years now, Timmy, how parents would come up to me, and I know they did it to you too. Oh, little Johnny or Susie's gonna be the next Paige or Jesse or Levi or whatever. And you're like, how old are they? Oh, well, they're 12. What's their score? No, they're not. These people don't understand that if you have the next Bodie or Jesse or Levi, it's obvious.
Oh,
It's obvious. It's obvious. And your child may be good, but to think you have the next superstar, the odds against that are pretty tough. Now, you mentioned, let's talk real quick about the factory, the gold tip factory. And you mentioned something a couple minutes ago about, and I talked to John Lene about this a little bit. People don't understand the complexities of owning a factory in Mexico. Number one, you don't own the factory in Mexico. Let's just get that straight, people. If you, they don't own it. They can own the shit that's in it. And like Tim just said, you can't even import finished goods into Mexico. Like, are you folks paying attention here? So explain to people briefly kind of the nuances of what it takes to not only run a facility in Mexico, but to produce a product there and then export it from Mexico.
well, I mean, due to Mexican law, the employees and we experienced this way back in 2005, and it spawned one of the major aero companies to try to hostile takeover of Gold Tip. They literally went in there and tried to, you know, they knew that the employees owned our equipment and we couldn't get it, right?
Right.
So it took a lot of, we lost somewhere around three, it might have been as high as $5 or $6 million in business in '05 when we were just cranking. And it was just because somebody tried to hostile takeover. It took us like 3 months to get our machinery back. And that's kind of where we ended up there because we kind of had just outgrown our facility because Gold Tip started right here in Orem, Utah. That's why I bought my house where I did, is because I was 10 minutes from work, right?
Right.
And I hate driving. The railroad broke me of that.
All right.
And so, we had actually, had outgrown our facility here, and we had, you know, bought Blackhawk from Bill Gartland at the time, and we had naturally just went to them, and they bailed us out. And then, you know, come around next year, that company was like, "Well, hey, we're not building your stuff, and by the way, you don't even own your stuff, so sorry." But it was just a simple hostile takeover, and that just has always just chapped me to the, you know. I remember Cody Powell or Walker telling me a story of being in the facility down there and like armed people at the door. Yeah.
Literal, folks. When
Little,
when he says hostile takeover, uh, pew pews have entered the chat. Like they they didn't show
so
up the court order.
yeah, it's not Tijuana is not the safest place in the world, but Tom and Bob built a hell of a facility down there. They really did.
Mhm.
We have a state of the art facility. We have state of the art fletching machines that we designed, and we do own those according to John Lene. So we do own the machinery, and because that's a big deal. That's millions of dollars worth of machinery,
Right.
and but it still boils down to the person running the machinery. So I think going forward, that is going to be tremendous. There's going to be a lot more oversight on that. Um, we all know that measured performance is always better performance, right?
Right.
And so, I've had a lot of conversations with John about that. The fact that, hey, accountability is everything. You got to measure everything. You got to hold them to a certain expectation. And I said, I got a lot of ideas on how to fix things. I'm good at troubleshooting problems. I'm good at taking variables out of things and figuring out it's not rocket science, for Christ's sake. It's not rocket science.
Yeah. Well, you've been going down there and doing mandrel audits pretty much for 2 decades.
Well, I mean, I haven't been down there only 2 or 3 times, but one time I went down there. This little story is I couldn't not for the life of me figure out how the heck we could build a crooked arrow on a triple X mandrel, a big old chunk of steel. And so I went down there and I sorted out 25 mandrels and that were perfect, just taking the variables out, run it through the batch, and boom, 18% yields. And I'm like, what? How is that possible? And Marvin had me do something else, and then we got to the third thing, and it was like, boom, 54% yields, which is incredible.
Right.
And the rest of them still just spun incredible. So, what people understand about a lot of these other companies like Black Eagle or Ultra, they're buying arrows from China. So they go in and they just buy it. Okay. They're not an arrow necessarily they're not an arrow manufacturer. Okay. They're buying a 001 or 003, and the overflow of bad shafts is on the manufacturer. So they're either being subsidized by the Chinese government, which I wouldn't put past, or they have to eat that, or they have to get rid of that stuff somewhere else. And that is carbon arrow manufacturing. Easton took a little stab at pre-preg rolled shafts and quit real quick. But by far, they build the best quality shaft. The best quality fly rods are built the way we build arrows, and the best arrows are built the way we build arrows. And we build the toughest arrows on the planet for a reason. And it's their materials. It's the resin star pre-preg. It's, there's other ways of building arrows. And you see, I was just on the internet today, commenting on a couple of things. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry can go to China and get a private label and claim they created this arrow. But if you look closely at the arrow, you'll see that, number one, they're not a real arrow company. They didn't build a knock either.
Right.
Boltip's got a lot of money invested in our knock bolts. Knocks are key. One of the and knocks, and I look at our knocks and our components as some of the key parts of our shaft.
Right.
So, and everything's done for a reason.
Yeah.
A lot of people look at aftermarket points because they don't trust the manufacturer, but I'll put our components up against anybody in the business.
Right. Right. So now, and I asked John Lene this too, and I know, folks, it's early. And you and I have had this discussion going back decades, but and folks, I don't have any information. If Tim wants to tell some, go right ahead. But if, let's just, Escalade Gold Tip owns the machines that are in the building in Tijuana. After that, there's a bunch of other Mexican laws that come into place. But if for some reason that came to an end, would you, and I asked John if he would be inclined to keep Gold Tip manufacturing in North America, but how inclined would you be?
I think I'm going to go with exactly what he said. It's all politics. The only way you're going to keep American manufacturing in the United States of America is if the federal government levels the playing field. You guys want to read a good book? Go read a book called Factory Man. Okay, it was about the Chinese government subsidizing the furniture manufacturers to put their furniture manufacturers to put our furniture manufacturing business out of business, and they completely devastated areas of North Carolina. And by the time American companies were fighting back to try to make it level and fair, there were so many American companies in bed with China that they were fighting for China. So you can't get there, right? So if you think we can go build an arrow, Easton can build their arrow here because it's a cheaper process, and it's not as good arrow because of, it's a cheaper process with less labor involved. It's an inline cured shaft. So, you get what you pay for. I think, we've always had Chris over here at Frontier Swiss, which is like a mile on the street from my house, do the majority of our components. I've already kind of, pushed John towards, a meeting with him and just let's have the conversation. I want to keep it here because it's when you have a guy like that really understands our business, it just makes things a lot smoother,
Right. Well, according to what John said, that they plan on distributing out of Florida. So
yeah, they're going to distribute out of Florida. Yes.
Well, it would make it a whole lot easier to keep the Utah manufacturer of components and just ship them from there to Florida.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that is, I pay a teeny bit more for them, but their situations. One where, there's certain products that you just can't touch,
Right.
I remember in one instance, like this last company sourced our brass uh, crossbow bolt inserts out of Malaysia. And Chris is like, hell, I can't even buy the material for what they're paying for a finished product. And that's because that government of that country subsidizes that material.
Right.
And so, we're already at a huge disadvantage when it comes to crossbow bolt sales because, all these crossbow companies are just going to China. We develop a lot of these bolts for them, and then they just go shop it over to China and get a cheaper bolt and whatever and cut us out. So, it's just there's a balance there, and I that's not my gig. I'm going to encourage. I would definitely encourage it because I know there's a big benefit to the United States, but there's also a big sales benefit to being able to say, "Hey, we made this in the United States of America." And there's a lot of pride in that.
Do you think that with because let's be honest, bro, 20 years ago when you and I were doing this, the word automation didn't mean what it means today. So do you think that there is the potential, not talking Elon Musk robots here, but do you think that there would be the potential owning the machines that John and yourself and whatnot could potentially make something happen with gold tips being made in America if use some automation? Because obviously labor here is not Tijuana either.
I don't know. It's like, I had a good conversation with a friend of mine, Steve Cobreen, and he's just like, let's just face it. Americans don't want to work in a factory, and that's, where would you even you hear employers all over trying to find, employees to do things. And it's just, there's a lot of political issues, right. There's ways of doing it, but, Trump's in process of plugging the hole right now. And then I guess after that, we'll see, what happens in terms of, opening up immigration as we need it, because we obviously, need that.
Right.
But everything's so expensive, it's like, it's crazy what things cost here.
It's gotten a bit out of control, that's for sure. So let's talk a little bit about what I mean, obviously we know Tim will be running the staff. But talk a little bit about kind of the depth that you and John may have discussed when it comes to your involvement with both companies.
Well, I think, one of the conversations I had with John that really made me feel good about it was, he's like, so what's your day to day? I says, well, I put in all the orders for the staff and stuff. He's like, you do what? I'm like, yeah, I've never had any help. I mean, they've never sent anybody to a tournament to help me. They've never sent anybody to sell product and help me. And
right.
And
he's like, what the hell are you doing that for?
One thing, you don't have to worry about that anymore. He said, we'll get somebody to help you. And that's great from a service standpoint too, because there's a lot of times I'm traveling for 4 or 5 days and I can't put an order in for a staff, or I can't check on something, or I can't process, run down a credit card for somebody. And that's stuff that, $15 an hour employee can do and do well. And your company's always got to have that point of contact. When Escalade finally sold, man, this company had cut us back to a part-time customer service person until I threw a fit. And it was just like,
right.
What do you expect to do with that? And
right.
So I think you're going to see a company that's much more heavily supported. I'm going to be a big part of training our reps, maybe doing stuff like Shields Universities, rider camps, just influence seminars, hopefully we'll get the Gold Tip podcast going again. I think that kind of stuff, there's a lot of videos that need shot for our website. I mean, I shot 20 videos and we edited it for our website, explaining every product, every component available to every product, and they never put it in.
Right.
It's like John's first line of business, I think, is to get us a new website rolling. And so,
nice.
One of the things that's tricky about you change all these hands all the time. Nobody knows where anything is. And then you get rid of the people like Casey who knew where everything was. Then what do you got? Oh, we'll deal with it. Yeah, what are you going to deal with? You don't know anything.
No, exactly. And I'm telling you, that's what happens when you have people that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground about our space, that don't even understand what institutional support means. Like,
It's it's crazy to watch because it's like it's not just gold tip. I mean, there's six, seven, eight legacy brands that are just going to get crushed.
yeah, no, dude, trust me, you have people running things that don't have any idea what it is. And they're like, oh, we can just create a spreadsheet for that. And I'm like, no, institutional support matters. And your assistant and people that
Yeah.
Lude, and these people, not only do they not understand what institutional support is, they think it's some sort of an insult. And it's like, no, just because all you can do is create spreadsheets and you don't have any real value and you're replaceable doesn't mean that.
Yeah, a lot of times they come into companies or they get hired, and then all of a sudden they got to prove their worth and their values, so they start, hacking stuff. And it's probably what happened when Card Express lost their staff, or
No.
it's probably what happened when, you know, I mean, it's insane.
Well, dude, I mean, Carbon Express let that whole building up in Michigan go. Like, they had a whole system for that and they let the whole building go. So,
It was
absolutely.
it was incremental because I remember when I first started shooting at IBO, there was an older guy that ran the staff, knew everybody, and then somebody got rid of him or he retired. I think they got rid of him, and then Dietmar was kind of running the staff, and love him or hate him,
Right.
he knew the people, he knew the right people,
Right.
and then they changed hands a few times, and then finally just
Right. Yeah.
my phone started blowing up.
Exactly. So let me ask you this. For those, everybody understands you shoot professionally, which means that you have certain equipment requirements. Like, if you were just Tim Gillingham and you didn't shoot professionally and you were just a Tim Gillingham guy, you'd be shooting a bare bow moving forward. However, with your draw length, with what you do for a living, with the tournaments and stuff, they simply don't have a something to fit that category. And I did talk to John Lene about this. So let's talk a little bit about not only your personal equipment requirements as it qualifies under the Escalade Bear umbrella, but how do you see yourself being able to help John and these other archery brands raise their products up?
Well, I mean, I think my main focus is gold tip and bee stinger. I think that's what they want me to do. That doesn't mean we're not going to have conversations about, hey, this I like this about this release. Why do you do this, or so on and so forth? Or I haven't even looked at half their products.
Right.
Why do you have you know maybe it'd be better off if you did this size of pin on this side or what have you. I mean, as far as bows go, I mean, I don't. I mean, I make more money shooting currently than I make working. So hopefully it stays that way. But I'm getting older, right?
All right. All right.
But old punchers never die. So, um, but he's been very fair about the fact that he understands that separation. Um, so we'll just, like I said, my job is to show my value. My job is to help, you know, justify to his board why he got all that money earmarked. We're gonna,
Right.
you know, my job is to teach people how to interact on our brand, and know every little nuance about our product, and fill our social media up with every bit of positive news we can. We got a lot of good things. I mean, I don't think a lot of people know that our Pierce Tours own at least 4 or 5 world records.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I would have two if NAA would have freaking turned it in, or USA Archery.
Right. Well, and yeah, and so so John said something that really resonated with me last week, and I used the term institutional support, and that is, I got that from an executive named Kevin at Loopold many years ago. We were in a big meeting and there was a lot of things happening, and he literally asked this other executive, do you feel like you have enough institutional support to execute on this strategy? And that resonated with me. Well, last week, time's running together, Timmy, we're getting old. when John Lene used a term, core competency. And that really resonated with me. And that basically means know your role, stay in your fucking lane, and do what you do best. And so core competency to me, that is an amazing phrase for one. And that comes to mind, like if I'm going to ask you, Tim, do you think that the juice would be worth the squeeze for Bear to make a target bow and enter the target bow market? It would seem to me, I mean, and I know you and I know what your answer would probably be, but John Lene, of course, the same thing is he's like, our core competency is right here. And
Yeah,
so,
they don't play in that space, and I think they're trying to, with gold tip and bee sting, are trying to start easing maybe into that space, but they also know their place, and you know, they know how to make a profit in that space.
and they're doing
It's
well.
like it's like Bushnell. When we have Bushnell, they're sitting here trying to own the bottom and the top, right? It's a hard thing to do.
Right.
I'll be straight up. They had some incredibly good top end product, but it's funny if I go to a match or something and I bring up, you know, Bushnell about, you know, quality scope, and people look at me all cross-eyed and stuff. They were just had, major scope snobbery, and it's like, oh, it's really good stuff, and it's like, but they wouldn't be seen dead shooting it because
It's
it's
in
so
Walmart.
hard. Yeah, it's so hard to play them games, and that's why, when Vista first took over and they threw an executive on us and he come in and he starts telling, Mitch that first thing they're going to do is take our main line to Walmart. And Mitch is like, over my dead body, and it's like, and, it was just that executive trying to show his worth.
Right.
But no, you got to listen. One thing that Gold Tip has taught me, especially under Tom, is that it takes a team to win. You can't, as an archer for 40 years, you pretty much are very self-reliant.
Right.
You get out of your life what you put into it, right? But and so that's kind of been a hard thing for me to deal. But you watch and you just realize you can't do everything, right? So you have to learn to trust people. They have to trust you. You have to trust them. And I think that's why you'll see Gold Tip really start to grow and thrive under John Monet. So
Absolutely. And so I know you're on the clock. I don't know when your pay starts. I don't need to know when your pay starts, but you just said that you got your new computer. You mentioned that you went through your intake and your orientation yesterday and all that kind of stuff. So here's the bottom line. When's Timmy activate? When does this start for you for real?
I'll probably Monday. I'll get all my IT stuff out of the way. But then I'm on vacation. I'm going to an air rifle tournament. So after that,
All right. All right.
we do some stuff while I'm there. But I'd already planned this vacation. Like Kevin Wilkie says, he said, "Shoot or shoot."
Right. 100%. They do. Well, they do. And I mean, Timmy's a good shot, whether it's an air rifle or a bow rifle, doesn't really matter.
Figure it
But
out. They might want to get in the air rifle business too. I know a lot about it. Spent a small fortune at it.
Timmy got the joke. For those of you not watching, Timmy had a little incident here a couple years ago and he lost half of his thumb. So I threw up when he said he knows a lot about air rifles. I threw up two thumbs and he threw up the snub.
I learned everything the hard way.
Well,
Life.
this is absolutely true. So, I'm assuming you don't have to relocate for this new gig.
No, I wouldn't have either. I mean,
Okay.
number one, I ain't living in Florida. It's too hot there.
Right.
We go to get. I tell people all the time. I said, every time I get to thinking about, man, I should just move somewhere where I could go buy like 100 acres and sell this place, and then I go visit there. And I'm just like, no, they got chiggers and ticks and snakes and humidity. And my wife asked me two questions. She always says, "Is it humid? And are there snakes?" that pretty much cancels a lot of places.
Florida is not entering the chat because they
Oh,
have.
no, no, no. I went through a pre-ranger school in the Army, and then they were asking me if I wanted to go to ranger school, and I'm thinking to myself, no, I'm getting out. I am not crawling around in this freaking swamp with gators and freaking snakes. That is not happening.
Yeah, the
Leave
snake and those snakes are not normal snakes. Those are like freaking giant.
no, I mean, it's the cottonmouth and the water moccasins and rattlesnakes. I'm like, ugh. You already know I hate snakes.
Right. Right. Probably not as much as Jesse, but you definitely do. And so
He,
what's that?
he moved there.
Well, he did move there. This is a very good point. This is a very good point. And so in my conversations with John, I asked him about events. And obviously I made a joke. I'm like, "What's that truck they have at TAC event again? What logo's on that?" And he's like, "Proudly Bear, and we love the TAC, and they're involved with TAC." And you and I could do a whole podcast about. And look, folks, TACs are super fun. If you don't want to keep score and you just want to go hang out with your buddies, cool.
Yeah, I mean, the
I'm
guy
not even
that
wearing
my
a TAC shirt, for Christ's sake. TACs are fun. TACs are not a unit of measure like a tournament is, and it's cool, man. Both can exist at the same time. And so, but we also talked about other events, ASAs, IBOs, NFAAs, Lancasters, all of those particular events. At this stage of your career, given your role with the company, you're not going to be able to cut back on those. Does
no, I mean, it's not going to cut back. In fact, he had kind of assured me that if anything, we're going to expand. Okay, I asked him, and we had conversations about the fact that there's certain tournaments like Vegas and Lancaster, indoor nationals, that we need a bigger booth. We need a nicer kick butt presence, and it's been just kind of all relegated to me to kind of like deal with it all. And I'm not that creative, and nor do I have a budget to spend. I've saved the company more money just packing stuff around in my luggage than I've, you know.
I'm not that creative. Hey, look,
I mean, in terms of, there's other people that's their specialty, man. They know
I
how to.
get it.
I tell them, hey, this is what I think I want. It's like the best products are built with you take somebody like me or yourself or a team of archers, and you go to an engineer and say, hey, this is what we want to build. Is it possible? And
Right.
the engineer comes back and says, okay, yeah, we can do this, this, and this, but hey, have you thought about this? And when you start hashing all that stuff out, then you get to a really good product. Okay. But
Mhm.
if you just give one guy the reins, that one guy's only got a bandwidth about this wide, he doesn't
Right.
know everything.
Oh, dude, folks, what Tim just said right there, you should mark that shit down and frame it because he's
One of the big examples of that I always give is the first patent I ever had in archery was the Hamsky third axis tool. Okay. And I had sold 30 of them. And I knew I had this whipped. I mean, I went through the old Frank Pearson videos back in the day, and I had to pay the price by going to Reading and my third axis being off. And the reason I always experienced it and nobody else did is drawing.
Mhm.
Okay. People understand further out that cable slide goes on the cable rod,
The more torque.
torque you get, the more your third axis is off. So I, I even got it's a funny story. We got into I went to Snyder's shoot last year, and me and him and Tony got into it. And guess who was leveling whose sights the second night? Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, um, but I went into work with I'd sold 30 of these, and I went into work and I knew at the time that it had to be done at full draw, and it was working fine, right? And I handed one to Preston, and he's always been pretty sharp. And he looked at me like, he's like, that ain't gonna work. I'm like, it works perfect. What are you talking about? He said, no. He said, that bubble's going to torque the same as one in the scope. I'm like, I thought about it for 2 seconds, and I'm like, shit. He's right. And so it took me 2 or 3 days to come up with a fix. But that's how you got to a good finished product. It's not with one person's input, it's several people's input.
Right.
An engineer can tell you if it can be built. Yeah, I want to build an insert that, for a 166 shaft that goes in and out in this tree pan cut a quarter of inch deep, but that's really not possible.
Right.
That it
Physically,
costs a
right.
fortune.
Right.
Engineer will tell you that. So, there's ways things can be done, but you get to the best result with a team.
Yeah.
And
100%.
and then there's how much does it cost? Because a lot of engineers, and Bob was really good at this, will tell you the best way to make it, but you really don't want to pay for it.
Right. Just
So
yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I can tell just from our conversation and conversations we've had that your spirits are definitely up.
yeah,
No
for
question
sure.
about it. Some weight has been lifted. I don't want to say the monkey's off your back or the black cloud, whatever analogy you want to put on it. Timmy is feeling very, very positive about all this. So let's transition that fact of your positive mind state about this now to your shooting. How do you, because you've been shooting and continuing to do well when you weren't necessarily so stoked about what was going on with your work situation.
I told my mother earlier, I said, I had Briggy run at the end of the year. She's like, and she said something. It's like, how do you think, why'd you do, I mean, how do you do so well with so much stress? I said, it's called desperation. He says, well, that doesn't usually lead to success. I said, well, it does for me.
All right.
I mean, it's like, it really makes me focus, and sometimes you just have to focus with what's in front of you. Tom made a comment to me one time, and it just has always stuck with me because I'm very ADD, and I just get 100 million things going. And he said, make yourself a list and finish one thing at a time. Some stuff's going to get passed by, and I mean, I have a hard time with that. I want to do so many things. I feel like life's too short. It's like, and I drive my wife crazy too because you know I want to be the best air rifle guy, and I want to be the best this. And there's certain things I know to stay out of, but because I
Right.
know my own personality. But lately, the last few years, I've just learned. I mean, hey, I got to stay in my lane. There's things I want to do. I want to create a YouTube channel. I mean, I want to do lots of different things. I'm working on a couple products on my own with another partner, and that's all been disclosed to John, and so it's going to be a bounce. Walking the line around some of that stuff. But there's creativeness. I mean, there's products that I have ideas for that maybe we'll team up together
Gotcha.
on that are my ideas, but maybe it fits better in your organization. Maybe it fits better, in I'm just all I'm looking for is an outlet for my creativeness, but I also I want a security for my future and for my family. I've never been a guy that was really like geared towards getting rich or anything. That
Right.
ain't me. I just want to have fun. I just want to do the things. You know, People ask you like, when are you going to retire? I said, when I got enough money to screw off at the level I want to screw off at. That could be a while.
Right. It's going to be a long while. So, last thing, and I'll let you go. I appreciate you. By the way, happy anniversary, Timmy. I know that you went and did a little adventure with the wife. That was cool to see. By the way, just from a framing standpoint, Tim, you should probably take your pictures with your wife with her in front of you so you don't look like you're,
Well, whatever.
I'm just saying. I mean, you're a big dude already, but
I was going to bring something up real quick. In terms of like, you want to know what kind of company Escalade is, and I was going through this thing with HR yesterday. Just kind of an overview of the company, and she had brought up the fact that Escalade cared enough about their employees that one of the reasons that they built this sourcing team in China, like they have a 22-man Chinese, they have a facility there, the people that help them, with that part of their business. And one of the main reasons was this, and she had brought up was the fact that, man, we had like vice presidents would be over there 3 or 4 months at a time, and it was just destroying their families and so on and so forth. And so for a company to actually care about that, I mean, that just says volumes. And
right,
and I seen instances of that periodically throughout that orientation that just really struck me as it's a company that holds on to brands, right?
right,
They build the brands, they buy brands, and they hold them. They're building this archery sector, and one can only expect that it's probably going to get bigger.
Oh, for sure. 100%. Yeah.
But you got to, you got to, you got to. It's always a tricky thing. It's just like it's mind boggling to me. I don't want to run these companies, right? I don't need that kind of stress in my life, nor is that my expertise.
Right.
I love competing. I love interacting day to day and helping people with their archery. And I think this is going to give me a big opportunity to do just that.
100%. All right, man. Last thing. Hunting. What happened?
Well, I came home early, just too much going on stress wise.
That's fair.
Shot an antelope earlier in the year. I went up elk hunting in Montana, and it's just, I went more to spend some time with this old codger,
All right.
help him out a little bit. And I think the first day we spent 2.5 miles driving on a flat to go get his other truck. So, but we had a good time. I got to get up in the mountains, and it's hard. The public land hunting is anybody that kills big bulls every year is paying big money, and that's just a fact.
Well, or they're savage. I mean, I guess
It was weird. It was like the elk weren't bugling. We were kind of hunting them off this field. I had a guy booger me bad with a side by side one morning, and it's just like, really, the one chance I get, the one I had just run at 56 years old, about 1.5 miles across freaking sagebrush, up and down the gully, and I got in front of these things. I thought I was going to have a heart attack, and I'm like, God, I'm perfect. They're going to come right to me. And all of a sudden, this cow picks her head up and just, I'm like, freaking side by side.
Oh.
I'm like, freaking idiot.
Yeah, well, it is public land.
I know.
There you go. All right, buddy. Let everybody out there know where they can keep up with Timmy and his adventures on the World Wide Web.
We might go do a little more hunting. Bodie wanted to go up. He was trying to encourage me to. I still got a deer tag for Montana too, and so I guess I got to go up and smoke one with a smoke pole. Ain't done that in forever, but
there you go.
I'm probably really going to focus on work, and when I get back from this air rifle tournament, just really like spend a lot of time just laying the groundwork for what we need to do, and just getting all that stuff lined out. It's not easy. I mean, there's just a lot of things, man. There's a lot of little things that I got to teach them, and they got to teach me, and we'll come to a good solution, I'm sure.
There you go. All right, man. Let everybody know where they can follow you on the socials.
I don't even know my own freaking address. Are you kidding me? You don't.
Okay.
Hammer Archery. I mean, that's a Hammer Archery. Or Tim Gillingham. I mean, I don't know. I don't attention to that stuff.
By the way, folks, in case you're wondering, it was back in like 2010 when Facebook really started to jump off that I had to physically threaten Tim Gillingham and Levi Morgan to even start Facebook pages. They didn't want to do it. So I'm not surprised.
Well, I mean, it's good now. I mean, but I still screw up all the time.
Yes, we all do.
I got to call Paige and she has to fix it for me. It's just Tim Gillingham's my Instagram. That's all tied in. So, and then I think it's Hammer Archery.
All right.
On Facebook. So yeah, I answer questions all the time on there. I try to put up stuff, but eventually I want to, and maybe even later this month, start a YouTube channel where I'm going to start
mask.
It's called I Can Archery. I've already got all my back panels done, and just got to get my partner on board and ready to rock and roll. And then we start filming content. And my goal is to just have it organized, have this content in an organized place so it's always there for somebody to go back to, because that's the best way for people to learn. You can do a seminar and give people deer in the headlights and they don't retain half the stuff that you talked about. But if if I were to have 500-600 videos, then do the seminar and then use the resource to kind of drag them along, then I think you got a much better situation. So
absolutely. All right, buddy. I appreciate you spending some time with me tonight. That's Tim Gillingham, everybody. He's been around the sport for pretty much ever, from the heyday until this day. And he's not going to be going anywhere. I'm super happy for Tim that this not necessarily a phase, but this chapter of his work life is behind him, and he is stepping into a very good situation. I have a lot of confidence in John Lene as a president. I like John Lene as a man. That didn't sound right. Hashtag no homo. But I like John Lene. He's a good dude. And I think he's going to give Tim what he needs to, basically start getting Gold Tip back to where it once was. I mean, I'm telling you. And
There's a lot more competition, and it's just you got to develop those relationships. This is a relationship game. It's a game of you know giving our reps the resources to build those relationships. Creating that rep dealer relationship. Having in-house people that they can call when they can't get in touch with their rep, or they just need to place a quick order.
Yep.
Those are those are the key fundamentals that you'll see change overnight, I think. That have been missing for quite some time. I mean, Cody put in 60% of the orders at Gold Tip for the dealers, even though we had a rep group. And man, that was a big hit to the company.
Yeah, for sure.
And so,
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's going to be good to see Timmy out there. I'm excited to see what, obviously Bee Stinger is near and dear to my heart. But it's going to be good to see Tim and John Lene and the team over there at Bear and Escalade start to put things back together. Timmy's not going anywhere. He's going to be at all the same places. I will miss seeing him show up and try to set up the Gold Tip and Bee Stinger booth all by himself, and it looked like an absolutely bomb went off of product as he's trying to.
getting Kyle trained, trust me.
I'm getting Kyle trained, but no, man. Look, this is going to be fun to watch. I'm excited that a couple of very, very good brands in our space were bought by the right company, and that matters to me. Whether I use either of them, it's not even the point. It's just the fact that I care about the industry. What's up?
I think you're going to see lots of good stuff. I mean, I just, there's so many things that I want to do, whether they'll let me do everything that I want to do. But I think John understands that you hit the ground running, you make splashes just, and you let people know that, hey, we're serious about this. So
100%. All right, everybody, that's going to be the podcast for today. Hunting season starting. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it every podcast until probably January. If you're out there in the Midwest, the East, and you're putting up tree stands, you're hanging sets, put on your damn safety rope, put on your harness, put on your rope to climb up or down. I don't care if it's just to do one little tiny thing. Put on that damn safety rope. Period.
Either that or sit on a bucket, smoke deer like Stutzman.
There you go. I mean, yes, but if you're going to climb up a tree and do any of that, please put on your harness or your safety rope. We see and we hear about these tragic stories every single year, and look, they're preventable, and that's all there is to it. So put on your safety rope if you're going to be doing anything in a tree stand. Hope everybody has a good season. We'll be talking again soon. You guys know the drill. We want to hear from you, not about you. And as always, everybody, love, peace, and chicken grease.